I am Rusty, the old dog in the Carter house, and I know why Daniel stood alone in the garage every night, like a man waiting to be punished. The others thought he had become cold. His wife thought he no longer loved her. His daughter thought he had given up on the family. His son could barely look him in the eye. But I knew something none of them knew. The man they were slowly learning to resent was the only reason their beautiful house had not already fallen apart. I had lived in that house for 13 years, long enough for my golden fur to turn pale around the muzzle, long enough for my legs to ache when the weather changed, long enough to know that humans do not break loudly at first. They break in small ways. A chair left empty at dinner. A phone turned face down. A mother washing the same clean plate because she does not know what else to do with her hands. A son laughing too quickly. A daughter pausing outside the front door before coming in, as if even the air inside might hurt her, and a father sitting in his truck for 43 minutes after arriving home, both hands on the steering wheel, not moving. That was Daniel. Every night, his truck rolled into the driveway later and later. The headlight light swept across the lawn, across the porch swing, across the basketball hoop above the garage, then died. But Daniel did not come inside. He just sat there. Sometimes rain ran down the windshield, sometimes snow gathered on the hood, sometimes warm summer bugs circled the porch light, and still Daniel sat. I watched him from the front window with my chin on the sill, my cloudy eyes half open, my ears waiting for the sound of the car door. When he finally stepped out, he always looked toward the house first. Not like a man coming home, like a man asking permission to enter a place he had already failed. The Carter house looked perfect from the street. Green lawn, white porch swing, clean windows. 2 maple trees in front, red in the fall, bare and black in winter, soft green in spring. Neighbors waved when they walked past. On Sundays, people slowed their cars and smiled at the kind of house they imagined happy people lived in. Humans are easily fooled by fresh paint. Dogs are not. Inside, the house smelled of old coffee, folded laundry, unsaid words, and something sharp I had learned to recognize over the years. Fear. Daniel's fear was not loud. It did not smell like panic. It smelled like a man carrying a box that grew heavier every day, refusing to let anyone see what was inside. His wife, Melissa, still cooked dinner most nights. She moved through the kitchen with practiced grace, setting plates, pouring water, wiping counters that were already clean. She was a woman who had learned to keep a home beautiful even while her heart was standing in the dark. Their daughter, Claire, was 30. She no longer lived there, but she came by often enough to prove she still cared, and not often enough to admit she was afraid of what she might find. Claire noticed everything. That was her trouble. Some humans survive a family by pretending. Claire survived by seeing too much. Then there was Ethan, 26, Daniel and Melissa's oldest child, handsome, well-dressed, a clean haircut, polished shoes, expensive watch, confident smile. The kind of man people trusted before he even finished a sentence. But when he entered that house, his smile changed. It became thin, careful, like a man stepping around broken glass only he could see. I knew Ethan's footsteps too fast when he came in. Slow when he passed Daniel, silent when he went upstairs. Guilt has a smell. It is sour, beneath cologne. It clings to the sleeves. It comes out strongest when a person believes no one is watching. But I was always watching. That is what old dogs do. We sleep, yes, but lightly. We hear the refrigerator hum at 2 a.m. We hear a mother cry behind the laundry room door. We hear a father open envelopes in the garage. We hear a son whisper, I can't do this anymore, when the whole house thinks he is asleep. The first night I knew the secret was larger than sadness. Daniel came home at 1:12 a.m. I remember because the microwave clock glowed blue in the kitchen. Melissa had gone upstairs hours earlier. Claire was not home. Ethan was in the basement, though the television had been muted for nearly an hour. Daniel entered through the garage door. He smelled of rain, gasoline, cheap diner coffee, not blood, not smoke, debt. Humans do not think debt has a smell. It does. Paper, ink, cold sweat, shame. Daniel placed a folder on the kitchen table, opened it, then shut it again, as if the papers inside had teeth. He pressed both hands to his face. I walked over and put my head on his knee. He did not pet me at first. Then his hand came down slowly and rested between my ears. "I'm sorry, boy," he whispered. I did not know what he was sorry for, but I knew he was not speaking only to me. The next morning, Melissa found an envelope, not the worst one, just enough to wound her. It slid from Daniel's work bag when she moved it from the hallway. She picked it up, read the red letters. Final notice, past due, legal action pending. Her face changed. She stood there in the morning light, holding that paper like it had suddenly made her a stranger in her own home. When Daniel came downstairs, he saw it in her hand. His body went still. "What is this?" she asked. He looked toward the stairs, then toward the basement door, then back at her. "It's nothing." Melissa gave a small laugh, not because anything was funny, because sometimes pain comes out wearing the wrong sound. "Nothing. I'm handling it. You keep saying that because I am." "No, Daniel, you are hiding it." His jaw tightened. "Please don't start." That was the first time I saw Melissa's heart break in front of him. "Don't start?" she said softly. "You come home every night like a stranger. You barely speak to me. You barely look at your children. You sleep 4 hours, leave before sunrise, and sit in the garage like you hate the sound of this family breathing. And I'm the one starting?" Daniel did not answer. From the hallway, Ethan appeared. He had heard enough. Not all. Enough. His face lost its color when he saw the envelope. Melissa turned toward him, and there it was. A thread between father and son. Invisible to human eyes, maybe. Not to mine. Fear passed from Ethan to Daniel. Warning passed from Daniel to Ethan. Melissa saw it too. "What is going on?" she asked. Neither of them spoke. That silence was the first door opening, but not wide enough. For the next few weeks, the house became a place of almost confessions. Daniel almost told Melissa the truth one night when she sat beside him on the porch and said, "I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be here." He looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "I'm tired," she said. "Then let me be tired with you." His eyes filled, but he stood and went inside. Claire almost forced the truth out of him 2 Sundays later. She had come over with groceries and found him in the garage, opening a locked metal cabinet behind old paint cans. Inside were folders, receipts, loan papers, medical bills that did not have Daniel's name on them. She saw only a glimpse before he shut it. "Dad," she said, "whose bills are those?" Daniel's voice was flat. "Work stuff. Do not lie to me. I'm not discussing this. You don't discuss anything anymore." He pushed past her. Claire followed him into the driveway. "You know what Mom thinks?" Daniel stopped. "She thinks you're having an affair." He turned around sharply. "What?" Claire's eyes were wet but angry. "She won't say it. But I know. She thinks there's someone else, because that would at least explain why you feel gone." Daniel looked toward the house. For 1 second, I saw the truth rise in him. It came all the way to his mouth. Then Ethan's car turned onto the street. Daniel swallowed it. "No," he said, "there is no one else." "Then who are you protecting?" Daniel looked at Ethan's car. Claire saw it, and for the first time, she understood the secret had a shape. Not a woman, not gambling, not a hidden addiction. A person, her brother. That night, Ethan came home after midnight. I had been sleeping by the garage door, but old dogs wake when guilt enters. Hausen. Ethan opened the door quietly. Daniel was already inside the garage, waiting beside the workbench. The only light came from a hanging bulb that swung slightly in the draft. Ethan's hands shook. "They called again," he said. Daniel did not move. "Who? You know who." Daniel's voice lowered. "I told you not to answer them. They said if the next payment is late, they're done keeping quiet." The bulb swung. Light. Shadow. Shadow. Ethan's breathing grew fast. "They said the lawyer still has everything. The hospital records, the witness statement, the report from that night." Daniel stepped closer. "Keep your voice down. I can't keep living like this." Daniel's eyes hardened. "You should have thought of that before you got behind the wheel." Ethan flinched. The garage went cold. Even the rain outside seemed to stop listening. "I know what I did," Ethan whispered. "No," Daniel said. "You know what happened. You still don't understand what you did." Then the truth came out, not all at once. Truth rarely enters a room politely. It breaks in through cracks. Months earlier, after a company party, Ethan had been drinking, not falling down, not reckless in the way people imagine. Just enough to tell himself he was fine. Just enough to turn a bad decision into a life-changing one. He drove home, a dark road, wet pavement, a man crossing near a diner, headlights, a horn. A sound Ethan never described fully, because some sounds live in the body after the ear forgets them. The man survived, but his leg was damaged badly, his back too, several surgeries, long recovery, permanent pain. His name was Paul Whitaker. He had worked maintenance at a local school. He used to run 5 miles every morning before sunrise. After that night, he learned how to walk across his own living room again. And Ethan? Ethan drove 3 blocks before stopping. 3 blocks. That was the part Daniel could not forgive. Not the fear, not even the accident. The leaving. Ethan had pulled over, shaking, crying, calling the one person he knew would come, Daniel. By the time Daniel reached him, emergency lights were already flashing in the distance. Someone else had called 911. Someone else had stayed. Daniel went to the hospital, then to a lawyer, then to Paul's family. A private settlement was arranged. Money, silence. No charges filed yet. No public ruin. No son destroyed overnight. Daniel paid, first from savings, then from retirement, then from loans, then from work he never told anyone about. Night shifts, weekend driving, repair jobs, anything to keep Ethan's name from being dragged into daylight, anything to keep the Carter family standing. You said it would be one payment, Ethan whispered. Daniel looked at him with exhausted fury. I said I would try. They keep asking for more. They lost more than money. Ethan covered his face. I didn't mean to hurt him. Daniel's voice cracked. But you did. Ethan sank onto an overturned bucket. I think about it every day. Daniel stepped back. No, you think about being caught every day. There's a difference. That sentence hit harder than shouting. Even I lowered my head, because it was true. And Ethan knew it. For a while, I thought that was the whole secret. The son had caused the wound. The father had hidden it. The family had mistaken sacrifice for coldness. But the second secret was already waiting. It came wearing a hospital bracelet. Melissa discovered it by accident. She followed Daniel one Saturday morning. Not because she wanted to spy, because loneliness had finally made her brave. Daniel had said he was helping at a warehouse. He did go to a warehouse for 3 hours. Then he drove to a clinic. Melissa watched from her car as he walked inside alone. When he came home that afternoon, she smelled different, not angry. Not only hurt, terrified. That evening, Claire came over because Melissa called her. Ethan was already there, pretending he had just stopped by. Daniel entered the kitchen and stopped. All 3 of them were waiting. Melissa placed a folded paper on the table. His medical summary: congestive heart failure. Early stage, but worsening under stress. Claire read it first, then Ethan. Then silence covered the room. How long? Claire asked. Daniel looked at the floor. 6 months. Melissa's hand trembled against the table. 6 months? I had it under control. No, she whispered. You had it hidden. Ethan looked sick. You've been working nights with this? Daniel said nothing. Claire's voice shook. Dad, you let us think you didn't want to be here. Daniel looked at her then, and the anger was gone. Only exhaustion remained. I was trying to keep you all from falling apart. Melissa's eyes filled. You did that by leaving us alone inside the fall. That was the cruel thing about the truth. Daniel had been protecting them and hurting them. Both things were true. Humans always want one truth to cancel the other. It rarely does. For 3 days, the house was full of movement, but empty of speech. Melissa cooked food no one ate. Claire cleaned drawers that did not need cleaning. Ethan stayed in the basement with the lights off. Daniel slept in the recliner because lying flat made him short of breath. I slept beside him. Sometimes in the night he would wake suddenly, one hand on his chest. I would lift my head. He would whisper, "I'm okay." He said that often. Humans say, "I'm okay," most when they are not. Then came the meeting with Paul Whitaker. Ethan said he wanted to apologize. Daniel refused at first. Melissa said, "You don't get to decide what truth everyone else is allowed to face anymore." So they went. Daniel, Melissa, Ethan. Claire drove. I stayed home, pacing between the window and the door. When they returned, the house smelled like rain and broken pride. No one spoke for hours. Finally, late that night, Claire sat on the floor beside me and told me what happened, though I think she was really telling herself. Paul Whitaker had walked into the room with a brace, slow, careful, his wife beside him, his daughter Lauren behind them. Ethan stood when Paul entered. He tried to speak, could not. Then he apologized. He said he had been drinking. He said he panicked. He said Daniel should never have had to pay a loan. He said he was sorry. Paul listened without interrupting. Then Paul's wife looked at him and said, "You keep talking about money like that's what we lost." After that, no apology seemed large enough. Ethan cried in the parking lot, not loudly, not for attention. Like a man finally understanding that guilt is not the same as responsibility. That meeting should have been the beginning of healing. Instead, it opened the deepest wound, because Lauren called Daniel 2 weeks later. Claire heard the voicemail first. Daniel had left his phone on the dining table. It rang while he was in the shower. The name appeared. Lauren Whitaker. Claire did not mean to listen, but families built on secrets train people to search for truth wherever it leaks. She played the voicemail. "Mr. Carter, I can't accept another payment from you. Not after what you're doing to yourself. Ethan needs to know the truth. Your family does too. Please call me." By the time Daniel came downstairs, everyone was waiting. Melissa, Claire, Ethan. The phone lay on the table like evidence. Ethan's voice was low. "What truth?" Daniel closed his eyes. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he sat down as if his body had suddenly become too heavy, and he told them. Paul had not been alone that night. Lauren had been there. She had stepped off the curb first. She and Paul had been arguing after dinner. Lauren had been crying, distracted, angry, not watching the road. Paul reached out and pulled her back. He pushed her out of the path. Ethan's car hit him instead. Lauren was untouched. Paul was not. That was why Lauren had been at every meeting, silent and pale. That was why Daniel had been sending extra money secretly, beyond the settlement, beyond what the lawyer knew. Because he had seen Lauren outside the hospital room the first week, shaking so hard she could barely stand. She had told him, "It should have been me." Daniel had promised not to tell Ethan. not to protect Lauren from blame, but to prevent Ethan from using someone else's guilt to shrink his own. Ethan stared at his father. "You thought I would do that?" Daniel's eyes were tired. "I didn't know, and I couldn't risk it." "You trusted a stranger's pain more than your own son's character?" Daniel's face broke. "No, I was afraid your character hadn't been born yet." That sentence changed the room. Ethan stood up like he had been struck. Claire covered her mouth. Melissa looked at Daniel as if she had just met a part of him she did not know how to love. And Ethan walked out. Not loudly. No slammed door, just gone. That was worse. Anger makes noise. Shame leaves quietly. For 2 days, Ethan did not answer calls. Melissa barely slept. Daniel sat by the window with his phone in his hand. Claire drove around looking for him. On the 3rd evening, Ethan came back. His clothes were wrinkled, his face unshaven, his eyes older. "I'm going to the police," he said. Daniel stood too fast. "No. Yes, we have a legal agreement." "I don't care. You could go to prison, maybe," Melissa whispered. "Ethan." He looked at her. "I can't become a decent man by letting Dad die as my shield." Daniel's voice rose. "I did all this so you could still have a life." Ethan turned to him. "No. You did all this because you couldn't survive seeing me pay for mine." That was the sentence. The one that split father from savior. Daniel's hand went to his chest. Small, quick. I saw it. Melissa saw it.
"Daniel?"
"I'm fine." He was not. Ethan stepped toward him.
"Dad, let me carry."
Daniel's face twisted with something deeper than anger. "You are my son. I know I was supposed to protect you. You were supposed to teach me how to stand." Daniel opened his mouth. No sound came. Then his body folded. Not dramatically. Not like a movie. Just a man reaching the end of what one heart could carry. Melissa screamed. Claire called for help. Ethan dropped to the floor beside him, saying, "Dad, Dad, Dad, Dad," like the word itself might hold him here. I barked until my throat burned. Outside, the garage light was still on. For the first time, I hated it. Daniel survived. Barely. The hospital changed all of them. White walls do that. Machines do that. The sight of a strong man, asleep under thin blankets, does that. Ethan stayed every night. Melissa held Daniel's hand even when she was angry. Claire stood by the window and stopped trying to be the reasonable one. When Daniel finally woke, Ethan leaned close. "I'm going to tell the truth." Daniel's voice was weak. "Don't run anymore." "I won't." "No," Daniel whispered. "Not just from the law." Ethan cried then, because he understood. He had been running from Paul, from Lauren, from his mother, from Claire, from Daniel, from himself. In January, Ethan gave a full statement. There were consequences. Not clean ones, not cinematic ones. Legal meetings, public embarrassment, neighbors who stopped waving, friends who vanished, money still owed, trust still broken, Paul's pain still real, Daniel's health still fragile. Nothing was magically repaired, but not happier, not yet. Honester. The garage light no longer stayed on every night. The envelopes came out of hiding. Melissa and Daniel sat together at the table and opened them. Sometimes they argued. Sometimes Melissa cried. Sometimes Daniel shut down and had to begin again. But he no longer carried the papers alone. Claire came every Sunday. She cooked badly. Everyone pretended less. Ethan sold his downtown apartment and moved into a smaller place nearby. He began volunteering at a rehabilitation center, not as redemption, not as performance, but because Paul once told him, "Pain does not disappear just because someone says sorry." One afternoon, Paul came to the Carter house. Lauren drove him. He walked slowly with his brace. I rose to greet him, though my hips hurt. He looked down at me and smiled. "Old boy," he said. I liked him immediately. People who notice old dogs usually understand quiet suffering. They sat in the living room. No grand forgiveness happened. Paul did not hug Ethan. Ethan did not collapse into a perfect speech. Daniel did not become a hero. Melissa did not stop being hurt. Claire did not suddenly trust everyone again. They talked. That was all. But sometimes talking is not small. Paul told Ethan about the mornings he still reached for running shoes before remembering. About the anger, about the humiliation of needing help, about his wife learning to hide exhaustion, about Lauren blaming herself. Then Paul looked at Daniel. "You should have let him face me sooner." Daniel nodded. "I know. You were trying to save your son." "Yes." Paul's voice softened, but a man can drown inside another man's rescue. Daniel closed his eyes. That sentence stayed in the house for a long time. By spring, the lawn turned green. Again, the porch swing moved in the evening wind. The basketball hoop still hung above the garage, unused. One sunset, Daniel stood beneath it. Ethan came outside with 2 mugs of coffee. They stood side by side. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Ethan said, "Did you hate me?" Daniel looked at him. The sun lit the side of his face, showing every line the past year had carved there. "No," he said, "but there were nights I hated what fear made my love become." Ethan nodded. That was the closest they came to forgiveness that day, and maybe it was enough. I lay on the porch, listening to them breathe. Old dogs know endings before humans admit them. Not death, not always. Sometimes, an ending is simply the moment a family stops lying about what happened. Sometimes it is the first dinner where everyone looks up. Sometimes it is a garage light finally turned off before midnight. Sometimes it is a father letting his son hurt. Sometimes it is a son no longer hiding inside his father's sacrifice. The Carter house never became what it had been. It became something quieter, less polished, more careful, but real. Melissa still had days when she could not look at Daniel without remembering how alone he had let her feel. Claire still flinched when phones rang late. Ethan still carried the accident in his face. Daniel still pressed his hand to his chest when he thought no one was watching. But now, someone always was. Not just me, all of them. And that mattered. Because love is not only carrying someone. Sometimes love is putting the weight back into their hands and standing beside them while they learn not to fall. I am Rusty. I am only a dog. I cannot tell humans what I know when I know it. I cannot say, "Open the envelope." I cannot say, ask your son what he is hiding. I cannot say, your father is not cold. He is burning himself down where you cannot see. So I watched. I watched a family mistake silence for indifference. I watched a son mistake rescue for forgiveness. I watched a mother mistake secrecy for betrayal. I watched a daughter grow tired from seeing what everyone denied. I watched a father confuse love with sacrifice until sacrifice almost took him away. And if I could speak, I would tell you this. Do not wait until someone collapses to ask what they have been carrying. Do not call a person cold just because they have forgotten how to show their pain. Do not let love become a locked garage where every light stays on except the truth. Because sometimes the person you blame most is the one quietly paying for a storm they did not start. And sometimes, by the time you learn how much of himself he gave to keep you standing, his hands are already too tired to hold yours.